Howdy folks, today we are going to talk about subdocuments in Mongo. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, let's say that we insert a document here, and we've got some field. So let's say we have a field, and then we just make it an object. And then we can make another object, 3, right? And Mongo has no problem with that, but each one of these objects in here counts as a subdocument. Um, this becomes a little bit more complicated and powerful in Mongoose, but for Mongo, it basically means that they just have nested objects that can be inside of each other, like JSON. And you might be thinking, well, what's so valuable about that? What's so cool about that? Well, the ease in which we can do it, right? I can nest something in here. I can do arrays, all sorts of stuff. That would be very difficult to do in SQL because SQL does not have a native JSON type. There are some extensions, like in Postgres, that can do this and add a JSON type, but it doesn't work naturally in SQL. So if you want to do something like a nested object in SQL, you usually have to save it as a text field and then parse it out yourself, whereas Mongo does that for you automatically, which allows you just a better way of figuring out and working with your data. So we're going to take a look at how to manipulate that and work with that. All right, so we've got our existing project, we've got users. We actually have the ability to do subdocuments already because of books. So we have put for books, so let's go ahead and create ourselves a user. All right, create user. All right, and let's go grab this ID to update the user. All right, and now in our books, we can do an array, right? But instead, I'm going to say, okay, title, book 1, author, kind of some nested stuff. Author 1. All right, and then let's put another book in there. Book 2. Let's say it's also by author 1. That's fine. We send that. It gets inserted. And if we go here, we can see now that we have these books as objects, as nested objects in here. Pretty useful, right? You may not want to duplicate data like this, and there's actually ways of handling that, which we'll look at when we go over Mongoose. But for now, we've got array, object, book, etc. All right, so that was pretty easy to just add, right? We just threw it in the body. That was perfectly fine. Well, let's say we want to manipulate this, right? So let's take a look at how we might do that. Let's say I put, let's do a put route here. We're going to ID book, and then book index, and then title, right? So we're just going to update the title of a book. Book index, and then we're going to grab the title from the body. All right. So we're not going to do delete one. In fact, this is going to look more like our put here. So I'm going to go and grab this. See. Now there's a couple ways to go about this. We could actually, so you can see we have our standard update 1. We have our ID here, our set, our push. We're going to actually get rid of the push because we're not pushing anything right now. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to set. Okay. So what are we looking for? We're looking for books and then whatever our index is and then the title. So we actually can just use a standard dot notation for that. Books dot, actually let me use books dot and then our book index, okay, and then dot title, and then whatever the title is equal to. Property assignment is, oh yeah, because this is here and JavaScript doesn't like that, we have to use that shorthand. So this is the shorthand that you use if you're setting an object key to an actual JavaScript value as opposed to a string, and because we're using the template string here, we have to do that. But let's say we put in a book index of 0. This should become books 0 title, which means it should update this field here. Well, let's take a look. Let's duplicate this. All right, and we're going to rename this to update book. Okay, So we still want the ID, and then we want book 0 title, because user ID, book index title, that matches user ID, book index title. And then we're going to go into our body, and in this case, we just want to have title and updated title. Let's give it a try. Oh, we have to restart our server first. There we go. Run that. It says modified count, match count. Cool. So if we go and refresh this, books 0, and you can see the title's been updated. So we could do that with the author if we wanted. Also, book 0 author name if we wanted to update that. So this is how you update more deeply seated elements in here. And then of course we've already gone over push if you need to push an element onto an array. All right. So let's talk about how we might remove an element from an array. All right. So I'm going to make a similar. Well, let's actually make this a delete because we are actually removing something, and so delete is more appropriate. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this so we actually delete the book index. So that's clear, okay, we're pulling this book index and we're deleting that. So this is not actually a delete. This is going to be an update as well. So maybe I'll actually just bring this back. I should just stay with that. All right, instead of set, we are going to do an operation, but it's going to be instead the pull operation. So the opposite of push, right? The opposite of push in most arrays is pop, but here we're going to say pull, and then we have to tell it explicitly what we want to pull. So we're going to say, okay, from books, and another operator in, and then I'm just going to give it book index. Okay. Oh, what is it not liking here? All right, because that should actually be like this and that, and there we go. So let's give it a shot. We're going to restart this. And then we're going to go here. We're going to update our delete. No, I don't want to delete it. I want to duplicate it. Duplicate, and we're going to say delete user book. And we're going to say book 0. Okay? We run that. It didn't update or modify anything. Well, why is that? Now, the reason that doesn't work is because of how Mongo likes to do its pull. So see, the thing is, if I tell Mongo, hey, I've got books and I have this index in books that I want to pull, Mongo will actually look for an element in the books array that matches 0 in this case, which is not actually what I want. What I need to tell it instead is I want to remove the index of books. And so you think, okay, well, maybe I go in here and I say, okay, let's book index like that. Maybe that'll do it. That won't do it either. What we actually have to do is we have to tell Mongo exactly what we want to match here. So I actually have to give it the object that I want to match. So instead, so let's say we have our book, right? Its title is an update title, right? So if I say title, an update title, and that matches this document, it doesn't have to match the whole document, it just has to match the field. Then we start that, and we go into here, and we delete our book 0. This doesn't actually matter at this point because it's ignoring it. Now you can see that modified count and match count matches, and if I refresh, that book is gone. So having the book index doesn't actually really help us there, except it can, because what we basically want to do is we need to find the object that we have to delete here. We have to do kind of a double query at this point. So what we need to do is we're basically going to go up here and we're going to grab this find one, right? And we're going to go down here, pop that in there, find one, we get our result, right? And let's actually just nest this. This is a little easier with promises. but I'm basically going here. And at this point, result is going to be our document. So then we know that if we need book index 1, our book is just going to be result dot books book index. So then we can actually just say pull book out of books. And that should work. Let's give that a try. Okay, delete user book, book 0. There is only one book in there right now, so that should delete that only book. All right, and if we refresh, we can see that book has now been deleted. So that's an important thing to know about how Mongo handles its subdocuments and things in arrays, is that if you need to delete something inside an array, you can't just delete it by giving it the index of what to delete. You have to actually get the object that you want to pull out of the array and put that into your pull so that it can pull that out. Okay, let's look at another thing that we might want to do for a nested document. All right, let's say that when we create our users, right, maybe we actually set up something in them for, like, let's just say a vehicle, right? Make all right, so we set this up in here, and let's go make ourselves a new user, and let's do test 2 and 2. Create that in here. Let's go fetch that user by putting the ID in here. And you can see now we have this data. But let's say at some point we may want to get rid of that noise, right? Like that noise isn't something that we want. So I'm going to make another delete route here for delete noise. Delete ID noise. Okay. So we have our find one, right? And actually we can do just update one with this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use another operator. We're going to call onset. Okay. Onset's a property, right? And so then what we need to do in here, if we want to unset like the email, we would say email and set it to blank. If we're doing a nested property, it's just like before. We would just say vehicle dot noise. I think it was noise, right? Noise. And then we just set it to this, and that should be that. Notice we're using that dot notation again to indicate where in the object we want to. If we were doing an array, we could say 1, for instance, but this is not an array. All right, so then we'll go in here. Let's duplicate this, and we'll say delete user noise, even though it's technically the vehicle noise. All right, make sure we get our ID in there. All right, run that. And now if we come back here, we refresh that, you can see our vehicle no longer has a noise. If you wanted to set another property on here, that would just be similar to the set like this, right? Like we've already done that. So what have we covered here? The ability, what is a nested document, and also arrays, how to handle nested arrays. How do we modify them? You can add new properties like this. You could even reset the whole thing if you just left this out, and that would just reset that whole object. We went into how we remove elements from an array. That if this is not a subdocument, then it would just, like if books is just a title, then you could pull it like that. If it's not, if it's an object, then you actually have to have that object so that you can pull it out. And this is how we do that. First you find this, and then you pull out the subdocument manually. And then if we need to actually remove a nested field, this works not just for nested fields, this can actually work for top level fields as well. But if you need to remove a field, then you can use unset as an operator. So you're starting to see why Mongo has so many operators, because it's not always clear just by having this property what needs to happen to it. We've got unset, we've got pull, we've got set. What else do we have? We've got push and each. So yeah, this is a I have a quick overview of how subdocuments work in Mongo. I hope this is helpful, and I will see you all next time.